Working every day to deliver for America's farmers, just as they work every single day to deliver for us.
The president's really smart to continue to talk about what the tax cuts is going to do for the American worker, the American person, and the American farmer.
Oh, are you happy you voted for me?
Later today at the White House, the president's going to sit down with the bipartisan group of senators. The president wants a wall. The Democrats want the dreamers.
If Democrats oppose a border wall, they're just saying they want continued, unending illegal immigration.
A brand new investigation into too close for comfort relationship between the FBI agents and the media. Federal employees may be behind the White House leaks.
We have serious concerns about people with the Bureau talking to various media outlets that weren't authorized.
We want our flag respected, and we want our national anthem respected also.
I like John Mellencamp. I just don't like this song.
Sorry. I think his daughter, you don't like this song.
Don't like it.
Rocket in the USA?
It's too simple.
See,
I want something complex that makes me think.
If I had to think what the producers were thinking in choosing that, I think it's the USA part, because people were cheering last night down in Atlanta, USA, USA, as Donald Trump, the President of the United States, came out for the national anthem before the National College Championship, where Georgia lost, sadly, for Georgia fans, and Alabama, to Alabama fans' credit, they won 26-23. Did you miss this part? Let's listen.
We want our flag respected. We want our flag respected. And we want our national anthem respected also. There's plenty of space for people to express their views and to protest. But we love our flag, we love our anthem, and we want to keep it that way.
Took a risk. He went down on the field. A lot of presidents don't do this, certainly a lot of politicians. And he just walked out and let the crowd react the way they want to react.
Yeah, listen to that
let's
crowd.
Listen. I thought it was 99.9% cheering for the president. So some people were probably aggravated, like people at the airport yesterday in Nashville who were delayed an hour because the president landed. It's just the nature of security. When he lands at the United Nations, everyone gets inconvenienced. In the pouring rain, they couldn't get into the stadium, indoor stadium, because the president had to be, they had to sweep.
Security. Well, I'm being from the South and having lots of friends that went to Georgia and Alabama. A lot of my friends were at the game. I'm texting them all this morning. What was it like when the president came out there? No one's answering me because they're all sleeping, because the game went on and on and on. Went into overtime. It was a great game. Good for both teams. A lot of people wanted Georgia to win because Georgia hadn't won. Alabama's won so many times, but it went into overtime. It was great for all the fans. And this, in my opinion, is significant because the president's, his ongoing war with the NFL.
Absolutely.
And many people have been saying this is why they watch college football, because the teams, they're in the locker room. I guess they would stand there. Who knows? But college is just great. People come out and they support, and it's so patriotic. And the president went out there on the field. Could you imagine being there to watch your team in the national championship game and then see the president of the United States?
Yeah, apparently an Alabama player, according to some news reports by the name of Bo Scarborough, was in the tunnel after the national anthem, and there was a camera, and he said something inappropriate about the president, apparently. But Don Trump Jr. Emailed out, he said, and folks, that is how it's done. It's not that hard. Just show some respect for your country.
Yeah, well, it's Trump territory. A lot of people down there in the South voted for him, so the majority really supported this.
But not in Atlanta. For the most part, Atlanta didn't go for him. But, of course, not the city of Atlanta necessarily going to those games. Meanwhile, we want to get your response to the president going out there, making that decision. He says the president's presence at the game, being escorted by members of the military. I'll read from the full screen. Military to midfield, and singing the national anthem with his hand over his heart was awesome, was as American as homemade apple pie.
There you go. Richard emailed, no matter how much the mainstream media rejects and mocks the idea, the American people are proud again to openly show patriotism and respect for our country.
Linda wrote, I cried with pride as he stood in the middle of that field honoring our flag, our anthem, and most of all, those who defend it.
All right. So the president is back in Washington, D.C. later today. He's going to meet with a bipartisan group of senators. Ultimately, what they're trying to do is they're trying to come up with a short-term budget fix. It sounds like they're going to get another transitory thing for another
Steve, would you also say
weeks.
they prefer to get a 2-year budget deal?
Right. They would prefer to get a deal, but they're not going to. So they're going to get a couple of weeks more on the clock and kick the can down the road. But what they're trying to do today is they're trying to essentially narrow down the differences between the Republicans and the president and the Democrats. Democrats want the dreamers in this country who are in the country illegally. Well, currently they've got status, but that's going to expire indefinitely, whereas the president wants a wall and Republicans want to get rid of chain migration and the visa program.
Right. You would think there'd be a sense of compromise, but Democrats, for the most part, you don't have all the leverage you think they have. Because think about this. Nancy Pelosi had a press conference about 6 months ago when the DACA thing fell apart. She was getting screamed at. They evidently stormed into Senator Schumer's office one time to representatives of the so-called Dreamers, saying, you better get this done. So they feel the pressure to get this done. And the president says, I don't feel pressure to get it done. I want to get it done. That's what we prefer to do, get it done. But I'm going to get the wall this time, and I'm going to end chain migration and stop the lottery system. Why can't they go back to the days in which people compromise?
Well, there's a telling memo that was leaked to the Daily Caller. It was written by Jen Palmieri, who's communications director for Hillary Clinton when she was running. And it was put out by the Center for American Progress. Fight to protect dreamers is not.
Stephen Miller is probably as learned about the conservative point of view when it comes to immigration as anybody in Washington. And he talked about how so far the Democratic Party just wants to stand in the way.
If Democrats oppose a border wall, they're just saying they want continued, unending illegal immigration. But let me deal with your other question, too. You talked about, they say, well, if you have chain migration, it could keep good people out. There's 7 billion people in the world. Most of them are good, hardworking, decent, honest, principled people. But the reality is there's a limit to how many people any country can bring in. And we as a country have a right to say we want to bring people in based on their ability to contribute to our economy, to be safe, productive citizens, and to uplift the nation as a whole.
Right. And keep in mind, too, no one has short-term memory loss. We know Mitch McConnell tried to stand in the front of President Obama's agenda as well when he was in the majority. But the Democrats are in the minority, and they do have to block the Republicans from getting 60 votes in the Senate. It's amazing to me that there aren't more so-called moderate Democrats in conservative states that Trump won that won't be open to breaking from management and doing their thing.
Name one of them who have talked a good game over the last year or two, but have ultimately voted with the Republicans.
Well, I could name the ones that should, but the ones that don't.
But who has?
Joe Manchin
has not.
The president said, I like Joe, but he has not done anything except talk.
Exactly.
John Tester, Heidi Heitkamp, Claire McCaskill, all should be open to this.
They should be, but the problem is it's all about politics. The Democrats don't want the president's party to win, and Chris Salcedo, who joined us from Texas just about a half an hour ago, said it's all about politics, but people are wising up to that. Watch.
Democrats are trying to get individuals into this country to build up a future dependent base. You pull in individuals from countries where the government tramples on them, make sure they don't have any prosperity, any upward mobility. You bring them in and you have the Democrat Party waiting at the border. Illegally, you bring them in. The Democrat Party is waiting at the border with a voter registration card saying, hey, just vote for us and we'll get you all kinds of goodies. Sooner or later, you run out of other people's money. Second generation, third generation Latinos are starting to get wise to what the Democrats are up to.
Exactly the same way.
So if they can't wind up with enough votes, you could shut down the government.
So they need at least 9 Democrats, Republicans do, in order to fund the government.
They need 60.
Right. And so a lot of Republicans, in theory, will drop out for whatever reason if something else is included.
Too much spending.
But I think what's significant is that Mitch McConnell says that if the president puts something forward, I'll put it to a vote. And there was a theory out there that he will not put something to a vote unless he can get the majority of Republicans. If it needs Democratic support, And when we lose some, he says, when we lose some Republicans, I wouldn't put it up. But he says, now I'll put it out there, whatever you give me.
All right.
Stay tuned.
Let's hand it over to Jill. You know, has some headlines for us. Good morning.
Good morning to you guys, to you at home as well. We do begin with a Fox News alert. North Korea will send a team to next month's Winter Olympics. The announcement coming during high-level talks with South Korea, the first of its kind in 2 years. South Korea also proposing the two countries to march together at opening ceremonies in Pyeongchang. This could be a potential breakthrough in peace after months of rising tensions over the North's expanding nuclear arsenal. One of the men suspected of killing a Washington state sheriff's deputy will face a judge today. Frank William Powell is charged with first-degree murder. He's accused of gunning down 34-year-old Deputy Daniel McCartney, responding to a home invasion outside of Seattle. Another suspect found dead at the scene. It's still unclear who actually pulled the trigger. The 3-year veteran of the force and Navy veteran leaves behind a wife and 3 young sons. A memorial fund for them has been set up, and you can find a link on foxandfriends.com. Today, the White House is expected to vote on a resolution supporting Iranians amid nationwide unrest. Majority Whip Kevin McCarthy and Foreign Affairs Committee Chair Ed Royce, both of California, introducing legislation condemning the country's protest crackdown. At least 20 people have been killed in the clashes, while 3,700 protesters have been arrested. The Iranian government taking the brunt of the blame after cracking down on peaceful demonstrations. Pink has a big announcement to celebrate. And here it is. She'll be getting the party started at this year's Super Bowl. The NFL announcing she's been picked to perform our nation's national anthem before the big game. This year, the Super Bowl will be held at U.S. Bank Stadium in Minneapolis on February 4th. So it's going to be very warm in Minneapolis in February, guys.
No kidding. Right, we've
That's
been
right.
there.
That's right.
All right, thank you very much. Speaking of the big game.
Close the roofs closed, it'll be warm. That's about it.
We were just telling you about how before the big game last night, there are some news reports that a player for Alabama by the name of Bo Scarborough said something inappropriate about the president. He apparently has gone on Twitter and is now denying it.
Okay. All right. Let's hope he didn't.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we just talked about it. No wall, no deal for dreamers. So how will that go over when the president sits down with Democrats today? We're going to talk to senior White House communications advisor Mercedes Schlapp. She's next.
Plus, he wore socks depicting cops as pigs, but that's not stopping one magazine from honoring Colin Kaepernick and elevating him to a civil rights hero, kneeling right next to Martin Luther King.
And they spent $30,000 building this dream tree house. One problem, they did not get a...
Today, President Trump holding a crucial meeting with Democrat and Republican senators to try to hammer out a deal on DACA and the border wall. So what can we expect? Joining us right now from the White House is Senior Communications Advisor Mercedes Schlapp, where it's very foggy there.
It is. It's very foggy.
So
can you see the White House in the background or no?
It's in the distance, indeed.
Oh, there you go.
But you know what? It's perfect imagery here because it's a foggy deal about what's going to happen with between the Republicans and the Democrats as well, because the Democrats want the Dreamers to have protected status forever, and the president's made it very clear he wants a wall. And you know what? Right now, it doesn't sound like either one's going to get what they want.
Well, this is why President Trump is committed to ensuring that we protect our homeland, first and foremost. Secondly, that we are able to bring in the Democrats and the Republicans here to the White House. That's why they're having a bipartisan meeting to discuss what they want to see in this DACA deal. The president has made it very clear. He wants to have secure the border, interior enforcement. We want to end chain migration and close the loopholes, including ending the diversity visa lottery. I mean, those are critical components to ensuring that we know who is coming into our country and also to enforce the law. And so for the Democrats, I think it's a bit hypocritical on their part if they were ones in 2006 who basically supported these physical border barriers leaders.
Right.
And, you know, it's time for them to come to the table. Let's strike a deal. The president wants to strike a deal with the Democrats, and the time is now to do it. The one thing, Steve, though, is to make sure that the Democrats don't use this as basically holding our spending bill hostage.
Well, that's what they're going to do.
Deal.
Mercedes, you probably heard us talking about this memo that was leaked. Refuse to offer any votes for Republican spending bills that do not offer fixes for the Dreamers. So this is going to be, you know, this is their line in the sand. They're not going to let you wind up with a spending bill unless they get a DACA deal.
Right, and what the Democrats are then doing is that they're putting the funding for our military on hold. It's basically would jeopardize our national security. That's right. And so I think the Democrats are really running a very big risk if they go in this direction of basically saying we're gonna hold on the spending bill because of this DACA deal. And here is the president saying, come over to the White House, let's talk, let's get this done. But, you know, the American people, what they want to make sure that our homeland is protected. They want to make sure that we have real immigration reform. It's why the president was elected, and the president will deliver.
Well, let's hope the fog lifts later on today and they can get closer to a deal.
I'm very hopeful.
All right. Mercedes, thank you very much for joining us live today from the North Lawn of the foggy White House. Not too far from Foggy Bottom, by the way. Meanwhile, today is National Law Enforcement Appreciation. This New York City Police Department sergeant made the ultimate sacrifice just over a year ago. His widow is here with a message for America as we honor his legacy.
Mission liftoff. Wow, time now for your news by the numbers. First, billions of dollars. That's the cost of a now destroyed top secret U.S. satellite. The Zuma satellite reportedly failed to reach orbit before burning up and falling into the ocean. An investigation is underway. My sense is that's not the way it was designed. And $30,000. That's how much a couple shelled out for their two-story treehouse that now has to be torn down. The Supreme Court declined to hear the case dealing with permit issues on Anna Marie Island in Florida. I think it's the most important case in the world. I'm shocked at that. And finally, 43%. That's how many people Zagat says want to get rid of tipping at restaurants. The survey found that those people would rather pay higher prices at the menu than fork over tips. As a former waiter, keep the tips. Ainsley.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Nearly a year ago, New York Police Sergeant Paul Tuzzolo was killed in the line of duty, paying the ultimate sacrifice, doing the job that he loved. And on this National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, we are honoring his legacy and all of those who serve our great country. Joining us now is that sergeant's wife, Lisa Tuzzolo, and the founder of Blue Lives Matter, Sergeant Joseph Imperatrice. And you've been on with us before, Joseph. I want to talk to you about why you started this organization and what this day means for you. But Lisa, I'll start with you. You just had the year anniversary of your husband's death, November 4th, this past year. He left you with two young children, two little boys. How old are your sons?
They're 5 and 4 right now.
So why should we appreciate, why is this day so significant for our country?
You know, I think that people don't realize the sacrifice. It's not just the sacrifice that my husband made on that day, November 4th, 2016, but it's the sacrifice that every person in uniform makes every single day. They are missing T-ball games and dance recitals and their, great aunt's 96th birthday party so they can be out on the streets protecting strangers, but communities that they work in to protect and to make sure that they are the safest that they can be.
Yeah, I'm sure this past year has been just excruciating. You said every night you put the boys to sleep and you talk about what they miss most about their dad.
Sure. The boys, as a ploy, I think, to stay awake a little bit, but they do want to talk about dad. They tell me every night how much they miss daddy. And instead of just saying, I miss daddy too, I say, let's talk about daddy. What do you miss about daddy? And this way, they're actually remembering memories of Paul rather than just thinking that it's okay just to say, I miss
Just
daddy.
So we all understand the sacrifice that your family's been through, and you're not alone in this.
No.
What is the hardest part about losing your spouse and then having so many people in America not appreciate our officers?
For me, the love and support that I've received from the NYPD has been unbelievable. I had no idea what a family in blue meant, both locally here in New York City, as well as Long Island, where I live, and across the nation and across the world. I mean, the outpouring of love and support has been unbelievable, but at the same time, it is so hurtful and so painful when people say negative things about our officers, because they're just doing their job. They're human beings like everyone else, and they're trying to do what's best for our country and our communities.
And Joseph, that's why you started Blue Lives Matter, right?
Back in 2014, when Ramos and Lou were shot and killed, every day there was something negative in the paper, and myself and 2 other officers wanted to combat that by doing something positive. We came out with wristbands, and fast forward 3 years later, and we've met so many families like Lisa and about 100 others, and the main thing is to let those families know that they'll never be forgotten, to put a smile on their face, to let them know that they're not alone, that there's always going to be somebody there for them.
And it's become so, our country's become so political and so divided, but when you're out there on the streets protecting individuals, you don't ask them what their political stance is. You don't care about the color of their skin, right? I mean, I know there's some bad apples in the bunch. There are at every business. But for the majority of you guys, you're amazing people. What do you want America to know today on this Appreciation Day?
Police officers are human, just like anybody else. And you're right, we don't ever think about somebody's background or their religion. And what we want to do is go out there and help. And that's why you become a police officer, because you want to do something that most people are afraid to do. And if you can make a positive difference every single day you go to work, that's the main purpose of your life.
Yeah. Have you seen some of your fellow officers? Were they picking and choosing who they protect? And did you see any of that?
Never. There's nothing ever discriminatory. You're always there unbiased. And the goal is to make sure that you're going to put yourself before the people that always need it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both for being here. We do appreciate all of our men and women in blue and the families. Thank you for your sacrifice.
Thank you.
God bless you, and kiss those boys for us. Coming up, are you trying to have a baby? You have to hear this if you are. There is a new hidden danger that could be lurking inside your medicine cabinet. And the latest way that the left is trying to take down the president over how he sings the national anthem. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich is going to weigh in on that coming up next.
After a year of protests in the National Football League, President Trump showing the nation how to honor the flag last night in Atlanta.
All right, the commander-in-chief standing tall on the field, hand over his heart, sang the national anthem ahead of the college football national championship game, won by Alabama in dramatic fashion overtime.
The president was escorted out onto the field by members of the Georgia and Alabama ROTC color guard.
Let's bring in Newt Gingrich, Fox News contributor, author of Vengeance. He joins us. Newt, we know you're from Georgia. Sorry about your team, but what did you make of the fact that after the president showed how you do it during the singing of the national anthem, hand over heart, and yet some internet trolls are suggesting he didn't know the words, he got lost, he's got dementia. Oh, my goodness.
You know, this is why the left is going to be very disappointed with the elections this fall. The new tax cuts are working. Over 1 million Americans have already gotten bonuses, and more are coming down the road. Companies are announcing new investments and creating new jobs. The deregulation is working, and that's accelerating the economy. The president's standing strong for a national defense and for funding the Pentagon. All these are real serious things. The left has nothing but junk. They can't talk about any serious issues. The most they can claim is that they are so committed to DACA reform, to the Dreamers, that they're willing to close down the American government over it. That's their battle cry. So I think if Donald Trump came out on the field, sang the national anthem solo, and did so perfectly, people on the left would claim this was a sign he's not really doing his job because he's studying music, and how can he spend all his time studying music when he ought to be president? This is just junk, and that's all the left has got left now, is finding new examples of junk.
Mr. Speaker, Congress is investigating these text messages between the FBI agent, Peter Strzok, and the FBI lawyer that was his girlfriend at the time, Lisa Page. We know about that, but we have some new information this morning that's suggesting that maybe these leaders in the agency, in the FBI, were leaking information about the Russia investigation to people in the media. And here's our evidence. Lisa Page texted him right before the election in October of 2016, said the article is out, but hidden behind paywall, so can't read it. Then he writes back to her, Wall Street Journal, boy, that was fast. should I find, and finds in quotation, should I find it, as if he has to act like he's searching for it, and tell the team? Now, the word find, people are saying online that they obviously were discussing how they could make it look like they incorrectly, they innocently discovered this article. What do you think about this? What does it tell you?
Look, the tragedy of all this is that 98% of the FBI agents are honest, decent people who join up for the best of all reasons. They want to help make America safe. They want to do their jobs. They're proud of the long history of the FBI. But you have at the very top 1 or 2% who really have gone sour and who clearly were engaged in things that were totally unacceptable. And this goes to the very top. It goes to Comey. It goes to the deputy whose wife had gotten over $700,000 in donations from Democrats, and he didn't recuse himself. And then it comes down to people like the two you're describing. But this zone of corruption is very dangerous and very real. And unfortunately, it puts a bad name on all the honest, decent, hardworking FBI agents. Many of them don't. But we have no choice. The Congress has an obligation to investigate and find out what happened. And candidly, so does the Attorney General. He's not recused in this zone of FBI corruption, and he ought to be more aggressive in finding out what happened inside his agency.
I'm not sure what the Attorney General's doing or not doing, but just a quick thing on this. There's a lot of talk about the president testifying that Robert Mueller asked in December the Trump team, hey, we'd like to sit down with the president, and they're thinking about it. Do you think the president should sit down with Robert Mueller?
I think that they should proffer that Mueller can submit written questions and they'll answer his written questions.
Yep, make it
but
that
I
easy.
would not get involved in a free-for-all. I think the idea of putting Trump in a room with 5 or 6 hardened, very, very clever lawyers, all of whom are trying to trap him, would be a very, very bad idea.
So why are they even thinking about it? Obviously, that would be the case.
Right. I don't know why they're thinking about it. They ought to say, look, if you want to submit written questions, we will provide written answers from the president. That's the only thing you're going to get. I don't think it's possible for Mueller to force it to happen. And I think that if they offer them that, then they take it or leave it.
Mr. Speaker, real quick, the president's going to sit down with top leaders from the Republican Party and the Democrat Party later today at the White House. They're trying to narrow their differences so they could get a deal to fund the government. But the Democrats are making it very clear, we're not going to do anything with the budget unless we get the DACA deal. Do you think the federal government's going to wind up getting shut down over the Democrats' demands?
Well, it's possible, but, they're in a very different position than we were back in '95 when the government shut down. We'd funded national security. We'd funded the FBI. If they threaten to close down the Pentagon, to stop American defenses over something that's so blatantly political, I think the Democrats are going to suffer very substantially in the country, and the country's not going to understand what their values are.
Well, stay tuned. All right. Newt Gingrich, we thank you very much. He's got a great book out there. It's called Vengeance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Thanks.
All right, Jillian, you got the rest of the breaking news that you were working on. And first, you started with the circus. Scary scene.
A very scary scene. Yes, we are going to show you this. So let's get right to this one, because a trapeze artist falls headfirst during a performance, plummeting 40 feet at a packed circus. Take a look. The horrifying moments are caught on camera. The acrobat clipping the safety net and crashing to the ground after slipping out of another performer's hands at the show in Belarus. She was knocked unconscious and rushed to the hospital with serious head injuries. That is scary. A Democrat-backed study meant to expose illegal online gun sales backfires. Congressman Elijah Cummings, along with Senators Elizabeth Warren and Brian Schatz, commissioned the Government Accountability Office report. Over 2.5 years, undercover agents made 72 unsuccessful attempts to illegally purchase firearms. Transactions failed either because sellers wouldn't ship across state lines or refused to sell to prohibited buyers. In other cases, the website froze or agents found scammers. Well, he started the NFL national anthem protests, and now the New Yorker is painting Colin Kaepernick as a civil rights hero. The magazine's new cover featuring Kaepernick and fellow anthem kneeler Michael Bennett alongside Martin Luther King Jr. The artist says if Dr. King were alive today, he would be frustrated by the slow progress for black equality. Now, this comes as we learn ratings for Sunday's 4 NFL games tanked by an average of 13% this week. I know you guys spent some time talking about that on the show earlier this morning, but yikes.
NFL ratings down. I got to imagine the ratings for last night's college championship are through the roof with that overtime.
I would bet so as well, but I'm sure a lot of people fell asleep. That was late.
It was late.
Yeah, when
Kept the TV on.
I fell asleep and Georgia was winning. Woke up and Alabama had won. In overtime.
And then you're like, what happened?
I know.
They never led the entire game. Meanwhile, 19 minutes before the top of the hour.
Turning now to some extreme weather. It is so cold up in Maine that people are ice skating on the beach.
Look at that.
This man taking advantage of the bone-chilling temperatures in New England, turning the sand into his own personal skating rink.
So when will it start to thaw out? Janice Dean, it'll start to thaw out in spring, right?
Right now, actually, we're above freezing for the first time in 2 weeks here in New York City, if you can believe it. So it feels downright balmy. And by the way, we do that in Canada all the time. We just, flood our backyards and skate out there. That's what we do. Let's take a look at the maps, because I do have some good news for folks along the East Coast. Look at that, 33 in New York. It feels like summertime here. 30 in Raleigh, 28 in Chicago. There is a warm-up on the way, my friends. It's going to be 44 here in New York, and by Friday, in the 50s. You can thank me later. Past 24 hours, you can see that rain and a little bit of snow across interior Northeast Florida. You're going to see some showers and thunderstorms. This is the big story today across the West, where they're dealing with heavy rain across Southern California. Flash flood watches and warnings are posted, especially for the burn areas. So this is a good news, bad news situation. We need the rain, but not so much of it that's going to cause some flooding, especially across areas where we had devastating wildfires. Then we've got a little bit of snow across the Rockies. All right, it's going to be 42. Do we hear a hoo-ah? Yeah? Inside? Oh, that was terrible, right?
The benefit of ice skating on the beach, though, you don't have to worry about the ice cracking and falling through. I mean, because it's just like a thin layer of water. I love that.
Thankfully, no one was injured during the video.
Indeed.
Right?
Maybe a steamer clam hole.
All right. Thank you very much, JD.
You're welcome.
All right, here's a question I'm going to ask you. Are you trying to have a baby? You have to hear this. If you are, there's a hidden danger lurking inside your medicine cabinet. We're going to talk about it next.
Plus, this Antifa activist and professor went after a conservative student, but that student just got the last laugh.